Hi, this is the Conscious Living Show, and we are talking tonight about one of my favorite subjects, and that is the subject of passion and where you get your passion, what it feels like to be passionate. And so during the show, we would love to hear you guys tell us what you're passionate about. And I also want to know when people first discovered their passion. So I'm going to start off tonight. Well, I'd just like you to introduce yourself real quick, because this is like our first official show. We were kind of in we did a quickie last week with you.
Well, I think most people know us. I'm Mark, Nancy's other half.
Oh, I thought you were going to say my better half.
Well, no, the conscious half.
The conscious half. All right. So are you telling me that I'm the unconscious half?
Well, we have to have a yin and a yang, so I thought I would grab the conscious part first.
Well, originally you were the blonde. I'm not blonde. So I don't think that will fly.
So I'm unconscious?
Sometimes you're relatively unconscious.
I'm going to be unconscious later tonight.
Yeah.
For sure.
Well, and you do tend to lose things a lot. So your consciousness does wane a bit when you're, preoccupied with other thoughts.
There you go.
But tonight I want to talk about what you're passionate about.
Well, yes. And my problem is I have so many things that I'm passionate about.
Okay, well,
drives my kids crazy that I like math.
Yeah, you do.
Yes, and I've been watching YouTubes with math classes and having a blast.
So what is it about math that blows your skirt up?
It's logical, and there's always something that you can discover behind the scenes, so to speak.
Okay.
Yeah. So you find these little intuitive discoveries, and it's always true when you find them.
So it's more of a philosophy for you.
Well, math is a philosophy.
Okay.
Absolutely. So that's just one passion, but I think this comes under the bigger category of what you talk about is having your designer life. Mm-hmm. So as you move through your days, which you only have so many, you can do the math there and see how many days you have, and boy, do they go fast, and see if you're making the most of your time.
Right. So if you come on to the show, say hi, let us know where you're from tonight. We're talking about passion, and I'll kind of keep going back as people join in the live presentations. And, I'm always curious what point in your life you knew you were passionate about something. And one of my earliest passions was saving little critters, little animals that my cat would catch. I had a perpetual birdcage hospital in my room. Didn't do very well. But every time my cat would catch a bird, I would try to save that little thing. And I had little tiny eyedroppers and, like give it little meal. And, so I always tried to save little things. So I knew I was passionate about protecting the vulnerable.
I was kind of hanging on to your passion about saving.
Yeah. It was a little later I discovered my other passions, but that was probably the earliest one I can remember.
There you go.
Do you have an early one? Your dogs.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that you have. And I actually have to tell you, when you get a little bit older, you go back and start thinking about some of the things that perhaps you weren't able to complete when you were younger. I love photography, way too expensive. Dogs, had great collies, raised them, but moved on to college. So these things get crowded out because of time constraints. And I think that's part of why we came to this topic of passion, because right now we spend a lot of time at work.
Right. And so, for those of you who are listening, I'm always curious about how passionate are you about your work? What is it that drives you to do the work? Is it primarily the paycheck? Is it just a means to an end to pay your bills? Oh, there's Bryson popping in from Texas. And he realized he was passionate when he completed his first drawing and was told that he was good at it.
being told that you're good at it is can be very influential. And
Definitely.
there are, I think it was Dr. Phil that said that there are 7 or 8 people that'll impact your life, and
Influencers.
at that
yeah.
stage, being told that you're good at it, that's what happened to me with math. Accidentally, I was off because I had the measles, and instead of doing addition problems, I did them as multiplication problems. So they were quite complicated. My mom was kind of mad. Why would a teacher give a second grader multiply 301 times 275? But I ultimately was told I was, they didn't. And I was told that I was good at it. So I'm sure that positive reinforcement made a big impression on you.
Definitely.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why it's so important if you're around kids and teens, that you do find something to compliment them about. They're getting told a lot that they can't do these things, that they don't know everything, that they're learning, so there's a lot of failures in your early life because you don't know anything yet. So if you find something that they're doing well or that you see they're passionate about, my God, go with that. Really encourage it.
Well, and it helps if you do have to earn it, because then you can see that you can change, you can improve,
Certainly.
You can evolve. But none of this happens if you don't have enough free time, if you don't have control of your life. And boy, is it easy to lose control.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we've been talking about for quite a while is, I don't know, would you call it a philosophy or it's a movement, I guess, the FIRE movement.
Oh, it's definitely a movement.
It's a movement.
It's been percolating, and now it's getting a lot more attention. And as people from younger generations are starting to question the way that us older men and women have been doing things.
Yeah, they don't think we did such a great job.
Well, they don't want to go on the same path.
No.
And maybe it's because they see how much fun we're having in retirement.
Are we not retired yet?
Well, we kind of are.
No, I don't feel retired.
Semi-retirement again.
No. But so to explain what FIRE is.
Well, it's an acronym. So financial independence, retire early. And what it's really saying is that if you can maintain control of your finances, you have, voila, control of your time, because so much of your time is spent working. So people come out of school or get busy working quickly, and doesn't have to be with a college degree, and save very consciously. And that's that direction, that's that determination you have, both in being determined and determining your pathway. And they save enough money so that they're no longer constrained by the number of hours that they have to work, trading time for money.
Yeah, it's quite great that we listened to a really great TED Talk today, and I'll put in there that the link for that so that you can check it out. And this woman talked about when she started actually saving her money, and then what that got her in her early mid-20s. And so, so the retirement idea of being in your 60s or 70s and I've always had this philosophy. I didn't know I had created this whole system, but I can remember in my 20s thinking, gosh, it seems like a waste to wait until you're 65 or 70 to retire. And I figured, when I was in my 20s, that by the time you're 65 or 70, you'd be just too decrepit to enjoy retirement. You can't even wipe your own butt. So how are you going to enjoy retirement? That's what I thought in my 20s. But so I always thought that retirement should be the middle ages, like 35 to 50, and then go back to work until you're done. And by then, you probably would know what you're passionate about.
Well, some people think that they're dying, and they take everything that they have, spend it, and then go,
oops. I didn't die. I have to go back to work. Well, that would be okay. I mean, there's worse things that could happen.
But I think, there's all kinds of sayings about, pausing, and we learn this from our yoga. And it's very important to reflect, to pause and reflect and make sure that you're on the right pathway, because you're never as stuck on that pathway as you might perceive yourself to be.
Exactly. So when you're, the woman talked about saving half of everything she earned. So is that what you would recommend from like the time you start working?
Well, you can just do the math and decide when you want to be financially independent. I mean, there are a lot of other factors that
Right.
might come into play depending on how things go with your investments. That's the key thing, is to save money, but also then to take that money and invest it so that it also, while you're working and paying your bills, grows, and you can start to retire.
Technical difficulty here. Okay.
There you go.
Um,
Yeah. So I think she did it in record time. I think most people do it in 15 years or so.
Yeah.
But it really requires a lot of discipline. I think that's really what is surprising to people, is that it's not easy to save enough for you to continue to live for the rest of your life. Now, 100 years ago, it was probably impossible. So now,
well, they all live to 40.
In at least in the United States and some of the developed countries, I think she was from Australia.
Uh-huh.
It is possible to achieve this if you're very frugal and you continue to work hard. She described herself as starting early, but also when she graduated from college and started working, she just kept living like a poor college student.
Right.
Now, in medicine, we do it completely opposite. We go
Yeah.
into huge debt that takes us our lifetime to get out of. So,
And that adds a lot of stress to a life, distress to
yeah.
a life.
And it reduces your choices
Yeah.
that you have.
Well, I liked what she talked about, and I think that the younger generations are doing more that's minimalist life. They don't necessarily want big sprawling houses. They don't want a lot of stuff to take care of, and because they see, our parents and us having all this stuff that we have to maintain, and that sucks up a lot of your life hours.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of different groups. I think a lot of people spend their money on a lot of little things. So when it comes time to have a home, that's their biggest expense. So they have to dial that back and keep it simple.
One of your pet peeves, I know, is like Starbucks coffee. The frou-frou coffees, they're like $5. So you think about it, if you're buying a $5 coffee every day, that's a lot of money that you could save and invest.
Well, I would challenge you now. Nowadays, we tend to put everything on credit cards so that we get the miles to travel. A little irony there. And building up quite a bit. And it is easy to lose track of your budget and what's going on. Start this service for 3 months and then cancel, and then they make it hard to cancel. And a year later, you find out you've been paying for a service you haven't been using. So take time to go through all of your expenses and see which ones really are important for you. If it is important, like your yoga is for you, it's totally worth it. But if it's not important, then save it, because it will give you more choices in the future.
That financial independence, I think, when we think about independence, we think about choices, and you've always talked about money being votes. And so if you have financial independence, then you have more votes to figure out how you're going to spend your time. And one of the things that she talked about in the video that I'll share with you is that she really had to she had to discover her passions. And that got me thinking about passion. And one of the things that she said that really struck me was to her guide to people was to start solving those problems that fascinate you. And I love that word, fascinate, because for me, fascinate and passion go together. If you're fascinated by something, generally you will develop a passion for it. And so, when we hear younger people say, or anybody say, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up, or I don't really know what kind of job I want or why I would go to college, I would say, take some time to really dive into what fascinates you about life and people and different aspects of education, and then see if something grabs you in a passionate way.
It was pretty clear that she hadn't picked her first passion. I'm sure she enjoyed
Right.
her college pathway and the work that she was doing. And then there were some things that woke her up along the way. But one thing that we do need to investigate is she did say that fire is not quite right, because retire early was probably incorrect, that retiring is quite hard. And so we need to investigate that, because she said that going and sitting on a beach, reading a book, having some wine and just letting the day pass was hard to do. So we're gonna get back to you on that one.
So, yeah. I mean, we can do it for a few weeks. I know that.
Oh, I think you could manage.
No, I'd get bored. I'd have to have some. I have to have a purpose. Some purpose, don't you think? I have
Yes,
to have something that drives me.
I'll give you something to think about. Some purpose in life.
I know
What
you
is
think
your
you have a purpose. That's your purpose,
Let's keep you alive.
right? My lifeline. All right, now you're being naughty, but that's fun. That naughtiness is passion. I mean,
Right.
that's
Right.
to have that passion that does inspire you, because I think individuals who are passionate about their lives and engaged and fascinated about some aspect of their lives make very passionate couples.
Yeah.
And it makes very passionate sex and love and it's an interesting life. There's nothing boring about being with somebody who's passionate about things. So I think that's part of what that can juice you, and I think it keeps people feeling young too, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and I think being able to take risk. I mean, the gentleman talking about painting and drawing, that there's huge risk in that. There's no guarantee that you're going to be able to sell your paintings or make a living doing that. The old starving artist thing is probably true, and but it doesn't matter if you're enjoying your time and your days. And a lot of artists, of course, found out that they were famous after they had passed. But it doesn't matter if you're living your designer life. It's you're on the right pathway.
And I'd like to inject a twist here. I like to be twisted. I worked for a while with people who were classified as disabled, and I did a yoga as therapy program, which was a 6-week program that I did for this group. And one of the things that I discovered is when people focus on their disabilities, that oftentimes they forget about their abilities. And so I had this one man in particular who was very depressed, felt unable because of his disability, which was pain in his legs. And so he really kind of had given up. He'd lost his passion. He'd lost his interest, and nothing fascinated him. So in one of the sessions, we were talking about, we did some visualization about, something that really makes you feel alive and happy. And he recalled that he used to make these beautiful wooden bowls out of exotic woods. And he just kind of started to tear up about how valuable he felt doing that. And so I just said, well, take that home with you and sit with that. You remember what you did, because you can still do that. There's that, you still have the ability to do that. That didn't change. He didn't come back to any more of the classes. And I thought, oh, I really pissed him off, tell my own little story about something I did to offend him. Months later, I ran into him at the grocery store. And I said, you okay? And I haven't seen you for a while. And he goes, oh, yeah. He goes, after that class, I just had this epiphany. I've been so busy making bowls that I haven't even gone to the doctor. I'm not on my pain medicine anymore. I feel great. I'm selling bowls and I feel useful again. And it was just this really incredible lesson for me to help people find what drives their own personal passion and not try to find it for them, but let them go in and remember. Like me, I can remember being that little girl trying to save that bird, and how important that was to me and how valuable I felt trying to do that. And that, was my catalyst to going into nursing and healthcare and trying to help people.
You haven't lost that, because last year there was a hawk out in our backyard that was suffering from being overheated. It was 100 and some degrees here in Reading, and between the thin air and dehydration, he wasn't going anyplace. And
he was grounded.
Nancy was out there spraying little sprays of water into his beak, less than a foot away from him, and he recovered, and we watched him grow up the rest of the summer, and of course the squirrels too. So you haven't lost that.
I've saved squirrels.
And
anything that's needing, and that's why I've always collected things that needed saving.
But it is hard, because sometimes you have so many things, and one thing seems to interfere with another. But having choice between two good things is way better than feeling stuck, struggling with something else. So find the first thing is that, to have your designer life in this world, you have to be financially independent. So it's very, very helpful to work toward that.
Yeah.
And when you finally achieve it, it doesn't matter what age you are. I mean, I wouldn't wait too long, but it's so freeing to have that. When we made our last house payment, that's very freeing if you can go through life without a big house payment.
And we sacrificed a lot for a long time to do that. I mean, that wasn't like that was an easy thing to do, but we set it as a goal and we worked toward it. And, as we all know, the days and weeks and years go by. So pretty soon there we were, and it was done. So Bryson, I would be honored for you to draw me something. That would be huge. So yeah, absolutely. Let me know how to work that out.
And even better if that's a kickstart back to his passion.
Yeah.
And we have hobbies, and those are similar. And but again, what really kind of got us started this way is Nancy's concept of having designer life, and that designer life includes some financial independence. If you're struggling every day of your life to pay the next bill, it's not very fun. And also, I think this kind of creates some compassion for people who are unavoidably in that situation.
Sure.
So
Absolutely.
if you can help somebody now who's in that situation, almost so many people without that, seeing it coming, it wasn't their intention, or it wasn't something that they brought on to themselves. It wasn't a bad decision. It's just COVID. And so if you see somebody that way and you can help them by helping yourself, include them. And that's a really good way to live life.
And I'll just add one note before we go, is that financial independence doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be massively wealthy. That is not what it requires. It requires that you're able to meet your basic needs without having to spend extra time working. And that you can then, sometimes what happens is then people can develop their passions and be more creative, and those things can turn out to make money. Mm-hmm. But it's hard to do that if your basic needs aren't met. And there's so many great examples around the world of cultures that really keep their lifestyle minimalist, and their happiness it's actually greater than people who have a ton of wealth. Because with a ton of wealth, oftentimes a ton of responsibility. So there's, we know that with happiness, that people don't really feel happier once over their basic needs being met, a roof over their head, food in their belly, and that they can provide for their kids to be safe and have an education. So it's like, those are some pretty basic needs. And if we can meet those with what we've saved up to, your 15-year, 20-year mark.
You forgot the fast car, the boat, and the snowmobiles.
Yeah, well, those are just things, and they just break, and then you got to fix them, and that's not as, you got to have a lot of extra money to have those things, because they cost you a lot to take care of.
So many concepts.
But those don't always make people happier.
So many concepts that renting things, not feeling like you need to have ownership of things. But those are just the details along the way.
Okay.
I think what you really wanted to emphasize is design your life, find your passion, and live your passion, and you won't have regrets. Nancy's been watching me as I've gotten toward the end of my medical career, reflecting back on things, and so when you do get older, you do reflect back, and it does help you put in perspective how important your passion is. You know, because you start saying, I'm not going to do this anymore. I've done this 1,000 times. I'm going to do something else. And it's hard to change, but it's so worthwhile.
Yeah, keep moving forward, and keep searching for that little spark of joy and spark of passion and a fascination. Look for things that truly fascinate you. And Bryson, I can totally relate to that. Drawing calms your anxiety and eases your stress. That's awesome.
For Nancy, it's standing in a hot shower meditating.
Yeah, that's so good. Which is where I was about an hour ago.
So,
all right, well, we're going to tie this up.
Yeah,
and then I'm going to go tie you up.
So
it's like, okay.
So totally forgot what I was going to say. No, take time to look into the FIRE movement. Look at how your day-to-day expenses might be holding you back and not moving you forward, so that you can more easily pursue your passion. If you're already pursuing your passion, congratulations. I think that's great. But be in a position so that when that passion starts to change, you can make changes with it, because it will change. Nobody these days does the same thing for all of their life.
No.
I think we're much more mobile, and things like COVID thrust us in directions that we didn't think we were going to be going just a year ago.
And don't let anybody squelch your passion. You know, don't let anybody put out your fire. If people, you know, if people have judgment about what ignites your flame, they're not the people to be around. You want supportive people. And, you know, there's no such thing as a harebrained idea. Everything's worth trying and investigating, especially if it juices you. And, you know what that feels like to be juiced about something. You get just excited. It wakes you up in the middle of the night. You can't wait to get up in the morning, go do it. You think about it. You plan for it. And it also makes you feel valued in this world. And that's important, that we all feel that we have a small place on this planet that is maybe going to leave it a little better than how we found it.
Yeah, and once you find your passion, usually good fortune follows you.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for checking in tonight, Bryson. It was great to see you and anybody else listening. We'll be back next week, every Monday, 6 p.m., streaming live on YouTube at The Conscious Living Show, or at The Sex Host Doctor, and on Instagram at The Conscious Living Show. Nice to see you too here, Bryson. And I hope you guys stay safe and plan for Christmas. You know, if you're going to be around people for Christmas that you're not normally around, you really need to plan for it carefully. Isolate. Everybody needs to isolate if you can. Narrow your exposure, because we're really on a roller coaster here, and we wish you all great health and happiness. And I just told somebody earlier, we have to do what we need to do this year so we can do what we want to do next year. Keep that in mind. All right. At the end of every show, what do we say? You're either a warning or you're an example. Thanks for being my example.
Ditto, love.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.